I'm honored to bring this bill to you today. Mr. Chairman, freedom to work is necessary if Missouri wishes to regain a competitive standing with the states that surround us. This important legislation will encourage job growth, make unions responsive and stronger, and promote the individual freedom of workers across our great state. For far too long, Missourians have left the state to find job opportunities elsewhere. Over the past decade, Missouri has lost jobs and citizens to other states. The move or migration from closed shop states to freedom to work states is proof positive of this fact and is part of the reason that Missouri now has less representation in the U.S. Congress. In fact, since 2000, nearly 5 million Americans have migrated or moved to the 24 states that have freedom to work laws in place. 1/4 of those states that have these laws in place border the state of Missouri. And they have been a continuous drain on job growth and often siphoning businesses along with those jobs over to those neighboring states. From 2002 to 2012, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, statewide private sector payroll employment in right-to-work Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Tennessee collectively increased by 3% compared to a 1.6% decline for Missouri. I think this data is probably the most striking data. So if you take the states that surround us within the Midwest, we're not talking about East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, we're talking about within our region, the states that surround Missouri, those 6 states, over the last 10-year period that we have data for, in the private sector payroll, we saw that those states that surround us, they saw a 3% increase during that period, while we saw a 1.6% decline in Missouri. So, it would be wonderful if we had data that was even more precise. In fact, we do. Okay, so to get even more precise, during that same period of time, we know as a whole, our state did worse than those states that are right to work that surround us. But we have the data regarding the counties that border those states. So if you take the data of those counties over the same period of time, from 2002 to 2012, the total private sector payroll employment in the 33 Missouri counties that border those 6 right-to-work states, including Clark and New Madrid, they fell in Missouri by 2.3%. So they didn't fall by 1.6. They fell even further because they're neighboring a state that has right-to-work. So the difference is stark when you get closer to the borders. And at the same period of time, in those states that are just on the other side of the border, those 6 states, they saw their numbers increase by 5.6%. So as you get closer to the borders in Missouri, it becomes the difference becomes much more stark. The truth is that nothing protects your job and increases your salary like job abundance and more job opportunities. There's no job security better than having an employer down the road who is hiring workers in your field. Data proves that wages rise faster in freedom to work states because of job abundance. Now, you'll hear people today say that people make less money in freedom to work states. But that is not considering what the data they'll bring today, and this is something that you should ask them, is the data they're bringing forward, data as I brought forward, that's specific to county by county? Is it specific to Midwest data? What you'll typically hear is they will say people in the United States, the state of Missouri, people on average make less money, or the states that are right to work make less money. But the truth is, states in the southern states, we've always made less money. And if you use that kind of logic, just that kind of sweeping logic, you could also come to some other strange conclusions. You could say, for some reason, the data concludes that states that have right-to-work laws in place also have warmer climates. You could also conclude that they have a higher propensity of having hurricane damage. You could also conclude that people, for some reason, in states that have right-to-work laws, also we see much more alligator bites. but you see the absurdity in those arguments. You need to use data that's clearly defining down to where the difference is. This data does that. But they will say people make less money, but it's also myopic and short-sighted and longitudinal. Over a period of time, it just doesn't hold out. Just simply ask the workers in Detroit if the unions were able to keep their jobs and their salaries increasing over the natural rate over a long period of time. Or ask the former workers at the Chrysler plant in St. Louis, or the former workers at the Solo Cup, Springfield, or the former workers at Regal in Springfield if their salaries have risen faster. A study by Ball State University in 2012 determined in their research that when they examined the manufacturing sectors of 10 right-to-work states for 10 years, right after those states basically passed right-to-work laws and became right-to-work states, they found that these results paint an interesting story about the effect that this legislation has with individual states. In 7 of the 10 states, the cumulative 10-year impact was an increase in inflation-adjusted manufacturing incomes of between 15% and 40%. This suggests either a growth in the number of manufacturing jobs in these states, higher wages for existing manufacturing jobs, or both. This results from an increase in manufacturing jobs or wages, or both. We have to be honest with ourselves and recognize that businesses, when seeking a new location for plants and facilities, often list as a high priority in their criteria that the state they're locating to needs to be a freedom to work state. And I've spoken with a number of location advisory firms. The way the conversation goes is that it may not be the end all be all, but for many states it's very much like the way in which you look for your next home. If you and your wife or you and your spouse decide that you're looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-car garage home, and that's what you check on the search, then you're going to miss out on homes that have just a 2-car garage. But if that's what you're looking for, then you're never going to even take a look at those homes. And in the same way, many businesses do not look at Missouri because of that. So I'm going to quote two leading location companies who are site location, who help businesses find a site. Including John Sisson, who is the principal of Global Location Strategies. Who has completed hundreds of successful site selection assignments for his clients with a total investment value exceeding $21 billion. He told me that I could share this with the committee, that, quote, "Our clients frequently eliminate a location if it is not a right-to-work state before we are even allowed to share that state's best attributes," end quote. Andy Shapiro, the director of Biggins Lacey Shapiro & Company, said that, quote, "Right to work is often a threshold factor, meaning that our clients will eliminate the location without further consideration," and he said this happens at least 60% of the time, end quote. Missouri will benefit from this legislation by luring jobs, investment, and increased revenue instead of losing out on that time after time. I also believe that, and the data indicates, that worker freedom laws will strengthen unions and help them be more accountable to their workers. States like Missouri with forced unionism are losing population revenue and growth because union leaders do not have to be responsive or provide value to their workers as they do in states where workers have freedom. If you look at the data, and it's true, passing right-to-work laws or freedom-to-work laws, unions don't disappear in those states, they become stronger. The public sector unions in this state are currently voluntary. They are currently operating in the same way with right-to-work arrangements. And so ask yourself, are these unions, are they ineffective unions? Is the FOP ineffective? Is the IAFF an ineffective union? Is the MSTA or the Missouri NEA, are they ineffective? And the truth is, we all know that they are very effective and they are very responsive to their members. Unions are more responsive and provide better services when their members have a choice. Allowing workers to have freedom to join a union strengthens each union by giving them the drive to keep up with an ever-changing workplace. A workplace which right now, in this economy and this global economy, a workplace that desperately needs their union organizations to be strong and responsive to their members and empowering them to compete in today's global market. There are countless associations that represent the interests of Missouri that operate in this way. And simply put, the fact that members can leave makes these associations better. But at the end of the day, this is about promoting an individual and their freedom.
Mr. Chairman, every witness opposing this bill should have to, place those behind me so I can see them, should have to answer for these facts that were laid before the public, not by me, but by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. This one, March 14th of last year, the young face bleak job market. Only 31% of St. Louisans aged 16 to 19 were employed in 2012, down 47% in 2000. How about this one? From a few months earlier, September of 2013, huge headline on the front page of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, poverty up, income down. 2010 census data is more bad news for area families. Mr. Chairman, those are not my figures. That is not my data. That is not anything from ALEC. Those are Obama administration figures from the Obama administration Department of Commerce Division of the Census. The census data reported by the president currently in office and those who work for him in his cabinet. This is the reality. About the time this story appeared in September of 2013 in the Post-Dispatch, KMOX Radio reported more grim data. Across I-44, from where thousands of Missourians used to be employed at the Chrysler plants, 2 of them, until just a few years ago, we have the world's largest mover, United Van Lines. They placed St. Louis #1 in outflow of people who were headed south and west because opportunity that existed when many of us were growing up in this state and when St. Louis had 4 auto plants and was second only to Detroit in auto production. Those opportunities are gone and they're not coming back. We all celebrate the recent success with the 777 work coming into Boeing. We all celebrate the success that we've added jobs recently at Wentzville GM plant and the Clay Como Ford plant. Those were special bills passed by the majority of you in the legislature working together in bipartisan fashion to address specific instances faced by those companies. But they do not answer the long-term trends. The 1920s, the decade my parents were born into, Missouri had 16 congressional seats. That's how important we were vis-a-vis the other states in the Union. 16 seats. Now, we lost them steadily over the decades under current law. The Missouri I grew up in had 10 seats. We had 10 seats in Congress, and we had 12 electoral votes. Still pretty important with 2 major metro areas. In 1981, we lost a seat because we're not growing as fast. We're barely growing at all. In fact, the numbers for St. Louis, and I keep emphasizing St. Louis because it's 40% of our state's population in the metro area and 50% of our economic activity, and we cannot have a healthy economy in this state without a healthy St. Louis regional economy. And in St. Louis, you had all this work, but we were steadily shedding jobs and not growing with population. And since 1970, while metro areas like Atlanta and Charlotte and Dallas and Austin and Houston and San Antonio have just exploded, and many more I could name, St. Louis has grown 1% 1% population. All we've done is move population around in St. Louis. That's essentially no growth. And so you see young people heading to the Dallases, the Atlantas, the Nashvilles, the San Antonios, the Austins, and the rest of these towns for work and opportunity. Now, before the downturn, Mr. Chairman, in 2007, one of our leading bank executives, and I don't know what his position is on right to work because I've never discussed it with him, but he was comparing Nashville with St. Louis. And he told me that these are 2007 figures, Nashville, with a population half the size of the St. Louis metro area, had more housing starts than St. Louis. Now you can see where opportunity, jobs, investment, and growth are going. They are not, by and large, coming to Missouri. And those of you who are aware that in the most recent decennial census in 2011, we lost another congressional seat. We were at 9 and Tennessee was at 9. They held on to theirs and ours went south. And now we're at 8. What you may not know is that on current trajectory, and we're halfway through this decade, we're on track to lose another seat. So that Missouri, which had 16 seats 80 years ago, or a little over 80 years ago, will have 7 after the next census in 2021. The facts are that freedom to work states attract business investments, leading to more jobs. In fact, Texas alone has created more jobs since 2007 than the other 49 states combined. Right to work states have lower unemployment than forced union states. The top 5 states with the lowest unemployment are right to work states. The bottom 5 in unemployment stats are forced union states. The 10 states with the highest percentage gains in household employment from the recession's end through September of 2012 are all right to work states. Conversely, 9 of the 12 states with the worst job losses over that same period are not right to work states. Another fact, Bureau of Labor Statistics show none of the 5 states suffering the worst private sector job losses over the past decade has a right to work law, while 4 of the 5 states with the greatest gain in private sector jobs have right to work states laws. Now, from 2003 to 8, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, jobs in right to work states grew at 9.1%, thank you, 2.5 times faster than in forced union states. 2.5 times faster. The union workers who used to be employed in Detroit, which has shed, what, 1.1 million of its 1.8 million population over the last 50 years, they're in Texas now. They're in Mississippi now. They're in Georgia. They're in North Carolina. Almost 70% of the business executives specify right to work as a key factor, important or very important, in site selection. Oklahoma, before the 2 most recent states, this is interesting because here's the neighboring state. Before Indiana added right to work, passed it in 2011, and before Michigan followed in December 2 years ago in 2012, the most recent state to pass right to work was Oklahoma. They passed it in a referendum, a vote of the people. So they did that in 2001. Would you be interested to know, Mr. Chairman, that Oklahoma added more union jobs last year than we did here in forced union Missouri? If there is nothing in the proposed bill before you that prevents union membership. If a union can sell itself to its members, good for them. Good for them. If they can demonstrate that they add value, I applaud them. And the facts are, not the emotional rhetoric from coal mines of 80 years ago. And there were great abuses to be corrected then. But that's not the America we're talking about today. No one disputes that the trade union movement has been a good thing for America, or that it has no place. No one is saying that. Now, we know that average compensation, we get cited to, well, compensation is higher in forced union states. I guarantee you it's got to be higher in New York, where a tiny little, what we would call a tiny little apartment can cost you $3,000 a month versus what you could get for that money in Missouri. or Oklahoma or Kansas. When you adjust for the cost of living, there's more money in the worker's pocket in a right-to-work state. Since 2007, all of Missouri's bordering right-to-work states, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Tennessee have enjoyed a higher percentage increase in personal income than has Missouri. No one is putting a gun to the head of the people who are leaving the St. Louis metro area or Detroit for the last 60 years until they passed right to work 2 years ago. They're leaving for opportunity and jobs in states that are a long way from where they grew up. Now, these are the facts, and Representative Burleson cited them very well. But I want to wrap up by saying this is not merely about economics. There is a moral issue at stake here. Why do the opponents of this bill want to force Missourians into unions just to keep their jobs? Why do they insist that workers be forced to bankroll political activities they do not support? The majority party would not have the members in this legislature that you do if a lot of union members had not voted for you. And you can go district by district and we can prove that, whether it's Jefferson County or St. Charles County or many other places across this state. Now, we're told by the opponents of this bill that this is a union-busting bill. Of course, right to work does nothing of the kind. It simply prevents unions from compelling membership as a condition of employment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jay Atkins. I'm General Counsel for the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It is a pleasure to be in front of this committee again. I will keep my testimony brief. We have heard this, if not these particular bills, this particular issue, a number of years in a row now. I'm not sure that I can add a whole lot to the discussion at this point, other than to say on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and our nearly 3,500 member companies and all their employees, this issue is a priority for us. It has been for a number of years. It remains so. And I would urge this committee and this body as a whole to finally take this issue up and pass it and move forward. I think that those unions, I think the good unions will thrive under right-to-work framework, and I think that those that are perhaps anachronistic in their utility are going to fall by the wayside, and I think that's going to make our state stronger. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Representative Smith.
To inquire, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
All right, how you doing?
Very well, Representative Smith. How's your foot?
Oh, it's getting better.
Good.
Good thing I got that good insurance.
Good thing.
My union contract. I was able to get that. Okay.
Probably better than mine, Representative.
Hey, you should think about it. It has its privileges. Membership has its privileges. Membership has its privileges. I know where I can go now. So you all have members with the Missouri Chamber, right?
We do.
And they get benefits, right, for being part of the chamber, correct?
Well, they get the benefit of my presence here today, so.
Which is awesome. Then there's other employers who choose not to be part of the chamber.
Absolutely.
They don't get that benefit.
No, they do not.
Okay, so in my union, just the machinist, if someone says, hey, this goes through and they don't want to be part of my labor organization, they still get that benefit. It's not right. Would you agree?
Well, I would agree that scenario is yes, I would agree that they still get represented even if they don't play.
And they still get the
Right.
wage increases that I get. They still get that good insurance that's taking care of my sports injury.
Right. And I think we've been down this road before in previous years when we've discussed it. And I suppose I would say the flip side of that coin is what one person refers to as a free rider, another might refer to as a captive passenger. That is to say, if there's a company in this state that does not find any value in joining the Chamber of Commerce because they think they can do a better job on their own, they're free to do that. They can come to Jeffrey. We're a lobbying organization. We lobby on behalf of our members. There might be companies out there that think they can lobby better on their own. They can hire lobbyists of their own. They can employ a lobbyist of their own. They can come down here and they can take their shot at creating law in this state. Sometimes it will be successful, sometimes they won't. And I think that is true also in the union setting. If there is no captive passenger scenario, then if I'm a man who works the high steel, maybe I'm the best rivet driver that this country has ever seen, and I'm in high demand because it takes brass huevos the size of coconuts to work the high steel. I think everybody recognizes that.
Right.
And if I'm that good at what I do, I ought to be free to go out and force somebody to pay me top dollar.
Now, I know we can go back, and this is probably fact. If we look at bills that were supported by the chamber, which companies came together because they saw a reason to collectively bargain. They saw a reason to come together, get the chamber going. I actually understand the chamber. If I was in the 1% and I wanted to get up into that 0.1%, I'd want to push wages down and cut benefits and make as much money as possible too, but I'm not. I'm on that other side. But just as the companies that are part of the chamber have decided to collectively bargain, the ones that are not part of that collective bargaining, they don't get the same benefit that the chamber gets. And I kind of use that with the kind of union comparison with that. The other thing is, it's kind of going back, it's unions have a history, and it's a history as diverse as this country is. Sometimes there were good moments there, sometimes there were bad moments. There were moments in union history where certain organizations were put together to protect certain people, but things have changed now. So a lot of the pushback in the South comes from the rocky history we've had in this country, where there's some people down there who believe that because of one's ethnicity, they don't deserve to make as much money as somebody else. So what a union does, it equalizes that. So with the employer that I work for now, and just say Representative Weber was there too, just say that system was still in place, which it still is in St. Louis, he could go in with the same qualifications, making more money than myself, and because of the union contract, it equalizes the field. I still have to get in the door, so it's still up to the employer to hire me. But once I'm in the door and we're doing the same thing, our pay is levelized or equalized. And with that, everybody benefits from that. So from the engineer who's not part of the bargaining unit, everybody benefits from that union wage, which is the baseline. Now, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I want to make clear a point, and if I have not done so previously. The Chamber as an organization and myself as an individual fully recognize the value in collectively bargaining. In some sense, the Chamber is just that. We're a group of companies that have got together to work towards a common purpose because we recognize that we can do that better when we band together than we can typically as individuals. So to the extent that you're suggesting that the Chamber is opposed to the idea of collective bargaining, I would say that that's not true. What we are opposed to is the notion of compulsory dues paying, because I think at the end of the day, unions do serve a very good purpose that you have outlined extraordinarily well, and I appreciate your insight on that, Representative. And all I'm saying is that good unions don't need compulsory dues and bad unions don't deserve them. That's all I'm saying. And if we pass this law, we get rid of that problem.
And I'd like to, maybe you'll have an analyst working on that, but a list of the bad unions, because I don't know of many. But thank you for your question. Thank you for accepting the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative.
Brad?
Just to inquire, to kind of touch on what he's saying, you collectively bargain for your members, but if you pass something that's statewide that benefits all businesses within the state, that's not saying that all businesses within the state are freeloaders. They're enjoying the benefits of what you've fought for.
We've made the pie bigger, is maybe one way
exactly.
of saying that.
So to say that a worker that's working right alongside, performing the same type of work that worker right next to him, because he chooses not to pay dues, doesn't make him a bad worker. He just thinks that his work and can speak for itself, and he can do it himself. But his pay, just because they've collectively bargained for that pay, it's the same scenario that he's just reaping the benefit of that. It doesn't make him, I guess, worse or a freeloader like we keep hearing.
Right, and I think if I understood that, I think I agree with the representative, and certainly I think the broader point you're driving at is that we all ought to strive to live in a place where there is room for ideological differences amongst those people who would work with side by side, and I think this bill again allows for that eventuality.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, members of the committee.